I was sitting in my daughter's pristine living room when she grabbed my flip phone off the coffee table and held it up like evidence in a trial. "Mom, this is embarrassing. You need to get a real phone. Everyone's been talking about it." I looked at the simple device she was waving around, the same phone I'd had for 8 years, and felt my stomach tighten. What I didn't know then was that my refusal to upgrade would expose a scheme that had been months in the making, and the 5 words I would eventually say would change everything between us forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Patricia Brennan, and at 62 years old, I've learned that sometimes the simplest choices reveal the most complicated truths. That Saturday afternoon in late October, I had driven 3 hours from my home in Riverside to visit my daughter Vanessa in her upscale neighborhood outside Seattle. I hadn't seen her in 2 months, not since she'd gotten engaged to Derek Whitmore, a software engineer she'd met at a tech conference the previous year. The house was beautiful, all clean lines and expensive furniture that looked like it belonged in a design magazine, rather than a place where people actually lived. Vanessa had done well for herself as a marketing executive at a major tech firm, and the house reflected that success. But there was something cold about it, something that made me miss the cluttered warmth of the apartment where I'd raised her after her father walked out when she was 6. Derek was there too, sitting in the corner with his laptop, barely acknowledging my presence beyond a quick nod when I arrived. He'd been like that during our previous meetings as well, polite but distant, always seeming to have one eye on his screen rather than on the conversation happening around him. Vanessa insisted he was just focused on an important project at work, but I'd noticed how his attention sharpened whenever money came up in conversation. We'd been having what I thought was a pleasant visit, catching up on family news and wedding plans, when Vanessa suddenly shifted the conversation to my phone. She'd mentioned it before, always in passing, always with a light laugh as if my technological preferences were a charming quirk rather than a deliberate choice. But this time was different. This time there was an edge to her voice, an urgency that felt out of place. "Mom, seriously, you can't keep using that thing. What if there's an emergency? What if you need to look something up? What if someone needs to send you photos or documents?" Her voice had that particular tone she used when she was building a case, the same persuasive cadence she probably used in boardrooms to convince clients to increase their marketing budgets. "I've managed fine for 8 years with this phone, sweetheart. It makes calls, it sends texts when I need it to, and the battery lasts for days. I don't need anything more complicated than that." "But that's just it, Mom. Technology has moved on. You're limiting yourself for no good reason. Derek can help you set up a smartphone. He's amazing with tech stuff. He could transfer all your contacts, set up your email, everything." For the first time since I'd arrived, Derek looked up from his laptop with what seemed like genuine interest. "Yeah, Patricia, it would only take like 20 minutes. I could get you set up with something really user-friendly. You'd love having access to maps and weather, and being able to video call with Vanessa whenever you want." There was something in the way he said it, something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was too eager, too invested in whether or not I upgraded a phone that had no impact on his life whatsoever. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm really happy with what I have. Besides, I know myself well enough to know I'd never use half those features. I'm not a maps and weather apps kind of person." Vanessa exchanged a quick glance with Derek so fast I almost missed it. It was a look loaded with meaning, the kind of silent communication that happens between people who've discussed something extensively in private. "Mom, I'm going to be honest with you. It's getting hard to stay in touch with you. Half the time your texts don't come through properly because your phone is so old. And I worry about you driving around with such limited technology. What if your car breaks down in the middle of nowhere? My car has a perfectly good emergency kit, and I've been driving for over 40 years without a smartphone. I think I'll survive. But don't you want to make things easier? Don't you want to be able to see photos of the wedding planning of our life together? I can't share things with you the way I want to when you're stuck in the technological dark ages." The phrase stuck with me. Technological dark ages. As if choosing simplicity was the same as rejecting progress entirely, as if my preferences about how I communicated with the world were somehow a judgment on her choices. I'd raised Vanessa to be independent, to think critically, to question assumptions. Somewhere along the way, she decided that independence meant having the latest technology, and anyone who chose differently was either ignorant or stubborn. I stayed for dinner, though the conversation felt strained after the phone discussion. Derek returned to his laptop, and Vanessa busied herself in the kitchen with meal preparation that seemed designed to demonstrate how many smart appliances she owned. Everything was connected, she explained with obvious pride. The oven, the refrigerator, the security system, even the doorbell. She could control her entire house from her phone, could monitor everything remotely, could grant access to delivery people, and adjust the temperature from her office downtown. It sounds exhausting, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Having to manage all of that through a device. What happens when the internet goes out? Vanessa laughed, but there was no humor in it. Mom, the internet doesn't just go out anymore. That's not how things work now. We have backup systems, redundancies. Being connected is essential in the modern world. After dinner, I helped Vanessa clean up while Derek disappeared into what she called his office. A spare bedroom filled with multiple monitors and computer equipment that looked like something from a science fiction movie. As we loaded the dishwasher, another smart appliance that beeped and flashed with various status indicators, Vanessa brought up the phone again. Mom, I need you to really think about this. Derek and I have been talking, and we're concerned about your safety. That old flip phone doesn't have GPS tracking. If something happened to you, we'd have no way to find you. Her words sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced this conversation. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the house. Vanessa, I'm a grown woman who's been taking care of herself for 6 decades. I don't need GPS tracking. The way you're talking, it sounds less like concern and more like surveillance. That's not fair. We just want to be able to help you if you need it. And honestly, some of Derek's family have been asking questions about you. They think it's weird that you refuse to use modern technology. They're starting to wonder if there's something wrong with you. Something wrong with me? Like what? Like maybe you're not as sharp as you used to be. Like maybe you're struggling with new concepts and too proud to admit it. The implication hung in the air between us. My own daughter was suggesting that my technological choices indicated cognitive decline, that my preference for simplicity was really an inability to adapt. I see. And what exactly have you told Derek's family about me? Just that you're set in your ways. That you're from a different generation. Vanessa dried her hands on a kitchen towel, not meeting my eyes. Derek's parents are very tech-forward. His dad worked in Silicon Valley for 30 years. They just don't understand people who resist progress. I don't resist progress, Vanessa. I resist unnecessary complication. There's a difference. Not to them. And honestly, Mom, not to me either. You're being stubborn about this for no good reason. I could feel my temper rising, that hot flush of anger that came from being dismissed and diminished by someone who was supposed to know me better than anyone. I'm being stubborn? I'm the one being stubborn? You've spent the last 3 hours trying to convince me to change something that works perfectly fine for me, something that has zero impact on your life, and I'm the stubborn one? It does impact my life when people judge me based on my mother's weird technology habits. It impacts me when I can't share things with you normally. It impacts me when Derek's family starts asking questions about whether you're mentally competent. Her voice had risen, taking on a sharp edge I'd rarely heard directed at me. Mentally competent. There it was, the real concern laid bare. This wasn't about my safety or our ability to communicate. This was about image, about how my choices reflected on Vanessa in front of her new fiancé and his tech industry family. I decided it was time to leave. I gathered my purse and coat while Vanessa stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, looking like a stranger wearing my daughter's face. I think I should head home. It's a long drive, and I want to get back before it gets too late. Mom, don't leave like this. We need to resolve this. There's nothing to resolve, sweetheart. You want me to change my phone and I don't want to change it. That's where we are. But Derek said he could help you this weekend. We thought you could stay over, and tomorrow morning he could take you to get a new phone and set everything up. You thought you could convince me to stay and ambush me into getting a phone I don't want? It's not an ambush. It's help. Help I didn't ask for regarding a problem I don't have. I pulled on my coat, feeling suddenly exhausted. Vanessa, I love you, but I'm not changing my phone to make Derek's parents think better of you. If they're judging you based on what kind of phone your mother uses, that says a lot more about them than it does about me. I drove home through the dark, my simple flip phone sitting in the cup holder beside me. It rang once during the drive, Vanessa's name appearing on the small screen, but I didn't answer. I needed time to think about what had just happened, about the strange intensity of her insistence, and the even stranger involvement of Derek in what should have been a minor personal choice. What I didn't know then was that my flip phone, that simple device that everyone found so amusing and outdated, was the only thing standing between me and a carefully planned scheme. What I didn't know was that my refusal to upgrade had just thrown a wrench into plans that had been months in the making. What I didn't know was that sometimes the oldest technology is the hardest to hack. The calls started the next day. First Vanessa, leaving increasingly frustrated voicemails about how I was being unreasonable and how we needed to talk. Then, surprisingly, Derek, his voice friendly and casual, saying he'd found an amazing deal on a phone that would be perfect for me, that he could drive down to Riverside and help me set it up if I wanted. I didn't return either of their calls.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Instead, I spent Sunday working in my garden, a plot of land behind my small house where I grew vegetables and herbs. It was peaceful work, grounding in a way that had nothing to do with technology or connection or being part of any network beyond the soil and the seasons. Monday morning brought a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me flip open the phone. Hello? Mrs. Brennan? Patricia Brennan? Yes, who's calling? My name is Marcus Chen. I'm a cybersecurity consultant, and I'm calling because your name came up in an investigation I'm conducting. I'd like to meet with you if possible. It's regarding your daughter Vanessa and her fiancé Derek Whitmore. My heart started pounding. An investigation? What kind of investigation? I'd rather discuss the details in person. Are you available this afternoon? There's a coffee shop in Riverside, the Corner Bean on Main Street. Would you be willing to meet me there at 2 o'clock? I agreed, though I spent the rest of the morning in a state of anxious confusion. What could a cybersecurity consultant possibly want with me? What kind of investigation involved my daughter and her fiancé? The Corner Bean was a local favorite, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table in the back corner where we could talk privately. Marcus Chun was younger than I expected, probably in his early 30s, with dark-framed glasses and the slightly rumpled appearance of someone who spent more time looking at screens than at mirrors. He ordered a coffee and got straight to the point. Mrs. Brennan, I'll be direct with you. I was hired by a financial institution to investigate a series of fraudulent account activities. During that investigation, Derek Whitmore's name came up multiple times. He's part of a network that specializes in elder fraud, specifically targeting people through their family members. I felt the blood drain from my face. Elder fraud? You think my daughter is involved in defrauding me? I think your daughter may not fully understand what she's involved in. Has Derek or Vanessa been pressuring you to make any financial changes recently? Any suggestions about power of attorney, joint bank accounts, anything like that? No, just the phone. They've been insisting I upgrade from my flip phone to a smartphone. Marcus leaned forward, his expression intense. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Mrs. Brennan, Derek's method is sophisticated. He gets access to elderly parents' smartphones, usually under the guise of helping set them up, and he installs monitoring software. Once he has that access, he can track everything. Bank accounts, passwords, personal information, all of it. But I don't do any banking on my phone. I barely use it for anything except calls and occasional texts. Exactly. That's why you're safe. That old flip phone of yours can't run the kind of software he needs. You've inadvertently protected yourself by refusing to upgrade. He pulled out a tablet and showed me a document with Derek's photo, and several others I didn't recognize. These are the people he's worked with on previous schemes. The pattern is always the same. He meets someone through legitimate channels, often someone with access to aging parents or wealthy relatives. He becomes indispensable, helpful with technology, always offering to solve problems. Then he slowly gains access to accounts, makes small transfers at first, then larger ones. By the time anyone notices, he's moved on. My hands were shaking. How much are we talking about? In the cases we've documented, anywhere from $50,000 to over $1 million per victim. He's very good at what he does, Mrs. Brennan. Very patient. Very careful. And he always makes it look like the victim authorized the transfers, or like they were confused, suffering from dementia, making poor decisions. You said Vanessa might not know. Do you really believe that? Marcus hesitated. In some cases, the romantic partners are completely in the dark. They believe they're helping their boyfriend or girlfriend assist an elderly parent with technology. They don't realize they're part of a fraud scheme until it's too late. In other cases, they're active participants. I don't know which category your daughter falls into, but the fact that she's been so aggressive about getting you to change your phone is concerning. I thought about Vanessa's insistence, about the rehearsed quality of her arguments, about Derek's eager offer to help. What should I do? First, don't change your phone. That flip phone is your best defense right now. Second, be very careful about any financial information you share with either of them. Third, I need you to document every interaction where they've pressured you about technology or asked about your finances. Can you do that? I nodded, feeling numb. Marcus pulled out a business card. I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Brennan. I can't prove anything yet. Derek is too careful for that. But I wanted to warn you because I've seen this pattern too many times. The push for smartphone access is always the first step. Your refusal has probably frustrated him significantly, which is why the pressure has been escalating. After Marcus left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at my flip phone and trying to process what I'd learned. My daughter, the little girl I'd raised alone, who I'd worked double shifts to support, who I'd sent to college by sacrificing every luxury and many necessities, might be involved in a scheme to defraud me. Or she might be an innocent pawn in someone else's game, genuinely believing she was helping her stubborn mother enter the modern age. I wanted desperately to believe the latter, but the memory of that look she'd exchanged with Derek, the coordinated nature of their arguments, the strange intensity of their focus on my phone, it all suggested something darker. That evening, Vanessa called again. This time I answered. Mom, finally. I've been so worried. You haven't returned any of my calls. I've been busy. Doing what? You're retired. What could you possibly have going on that's more important than talking to your daughter? The dismissiveness in her voice stung. I had hobbies, friends, a life that apparently didn't register as real or valid because it didn't involve the constant connectivity she valued. Actually, Vanessa, I had an interesting meeting today. Someone wanted to talk to me about technology and fraud, and the importance of being careful about who has access to your devices. Silence. Then, in a voice that sounded carefully neutral, oh? Who was that? Just someone who made me realize that my old flip phone might be smarter than everyone gives it credit for. Mom, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that sometimes refusing to upgrade isn't about being stubborn or behind the times. Sometimes it's about recognizing that not every new thing is an improvement. Sometimes the old ways are safer. Are you feeling okay? You're not making much sense. I'm making perfect sense, sweetheart. I'm just not making the sense you want me to make. Look, Derek found an even better deal on a phone. We could come down this weekend and help you. We'll make a day of it, maybe take you out to lunch, spend some real time together. There it was again, the push. The insistence. The suggestion that my refusal was preventing us from spending quality time together, as if the presence or absence of a smartphone had anything to do with the quality of our relationship. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Are you mad about Saturday? Because we were just trying to help. I'm not mad, Vanessa. I'm just clear. I'm clear that I don't want a new phone. And I'm clear that I'm not going to be pressured into getting one. And I'm getting very curious about why it matters so much to you and Derek. It doesn't matter that much. We just want you to be safe. Safe from what? From getting lost? From not being able to look up recipes? Or safe from something else? What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. Why does Derek care what kind of phone I use? He barely knows me. We've met maybe 4 times. Why is he so invested in helping me upgrade? Because he's a good person who wants to help his future mother-in-law. Or because he needs access to something that my current phone doesn't allow. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she might have hung up. When Vanessa finally spoke, her voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're being paranoid and insulting. Derek has been nothing but kind to you. Has he? Or has he been strategic? There's a difference, Vanessa. Kindness is offered without expectation. Strategy always has an endgame. I think we need to take a break from talking until you're ready to apologize for whatever this is. Maybe that's best. But Vanessa, one more thing. Yes. If you're involved in something that you think is harmless, something Derek has convinced you is just helping out or making things easier, I want you to think very carefully about whether that's really true. I want you to ask yourself what happens to people who get caught up in schemes they didn't fully understand. I have no idea what you're talking about. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my flip phone. This simple device that had somehow become the center of a battle I hadn't known I was fighting. Marcus had told me to document everything, so I opened a notebook and started writing down every conversation I could remember about my phone, every time Derek had shown unusual interest in my finances, every moment that had felt slightly off. The list was longer than I expected. Small things mostly. Derek asking about my retirement accounts in a way that seemed casual but specific. Vanessa mentioning that they were thinking about buying investment property and wondering if I might want to be involved. Derek offering to help me set up online banking because it was so much more convenient than going to the branch. Each individual incident could be explained away as normal conversation, normal helpfulness. But taken together they formed a pattern. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Vanessa as a little girl, how she used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, how she'd hold my hand at the grocery store, how she'd bring me dandelions from the yard as if they were precious roses. Where had that little girl gone? When had she become someone who might be capable of viewing her own mother as a mark, as a source of funds to be accessed and exploited? Or was I being paranoid as she'd suggested? Was Marcus Chun wrong about Derek? Was I destroying my relationship with my daughter over a conspiracy theory about smartphones and fraud? I picked up my flip phone and opened it, staring at the simple screen with its basic functions. Make calls. Send texts. Nothing more. Nothing that could be monitored or hacked or used as a gateway to my financial life. In that moment I made a decision. I would keep my old phone, keep my boundaries, keep my money in accounts that required in-person verification and physical signatures. And I would watch very carefully to see what happened next. Because if Marcus was right, if Derek really was running a fraud scheme, then my refusal to upgrade had just become a serious problem for him. And desperate people do desperate things when their carefully laid plans start falling apart. The next morning brought flowers. A massive arrangement of roses and lilies delivered to my door with a card that read, "We love you, Mom. Let's start fresh. Please call us. Vanessa and Derek." I put the flowers in water and threw away the card. Starting fresh would require more than flowers. It would require truth, and I wasn't sure either of them was capable of providing that anymore. My phone rang that afternoon. Another unknown number, but something told me to answer. "Mrs. Brennan? This is Detective Sarah Morrison from the Seattle Police Department Financial Crimes Unit. I understand you spoke with Marcus Chen yesterday. I wanted to follow up with you about some concerns we have regarding Derek Whitmore. We talked for an hour." Detective Morrison confirmed everything Marcus had told me and added disturbing details about Derek's previous victims. 3 elderly women, all mothers or mothers-in-law of Derek's former romantic partners. All had been convinced to upgrade to smartphones. All had suffered significant financial losses before anyone noticed what was happening. 2 of the women were still trying to recover their money. The 3rd had died before the investigation concluded, leaving questions that would never be answered. "Your daughter filed for a marriage license 3 weeks ago," Detective Morrison said. "The wedding is scheduled for January 15th. From our experience, Derek tends to escalate his efforts as wedding dates approach. He knows that once he's legally family, he'll have more legitimacy, more access, more ability to explain away any suspicious financial activity. So you think Vanessa knows what he's doing?" "I don't know, Mrs. Brennan. In one previous case, the girlfriend was completely unaware until we arrested him. She was devastated, couldn't believe the man she loved was a criminal. In the other cases, the partners were more complicit, actively helping to isolate the victims and facilitate the fraud. Your daughter's behavior could indicate either scenario. What should I do?" "Keep doing exactly what you've been doing. Keep that flip phone. Keep your financial information private. Document everything. And if they escalate the pressure, if they make any threats or show up unannounced trying to force the issue, call me immediately." She gave me her direct number and made me promise to check in weekly, whether or not anything significant happened. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet house and realized that my simple life, my garden and my books and my old-fashioned phone, had become a battlefield. My daughter and her fiancé on one side, trying to breach defenses I hadn't even known I was maintaining. Me on the other side, trying to protect assets I'd spent decades building while simultaneously hoping I was wrong about everything. The worst part wasn't the potential financial loss. Money can be replaced, accounts can be recovered. The worst part was the loss of trust. The knowledge that every conversation with Vanessa would now be filtered through suspicion and doubt. Was she calling because she missed me or because Derek needed information? Were her questions about my health genuine concern or reconnaissance for future manipulation? I thought about calling my sister Ruth, who lived in Boston and had always been my sounding board for difficult decisions. But what would I say? I think your niece is helping her fiancé plan to steal from me? I suspect my daughter sees me as a retirement fund rather than a person? It all sounded insane, paranoid. Exactly like the mentally declining elderly woman Vanessa had implied I was becoming. But my flip phone sat on the table, silent and simple and unhackable. And that simple device was driving someone crazy with frustration. That had to mean something. That had to mean I was right to be suspicious. Because if Derek were really just a helpful future son-in-law, if Vanessa were really just a concerned daughter, my choice of phone would be a minor eccentricity, not a crisis requiring intervention. 3 days passed with no contact from Vanessa, the longest week gone without talking in years. Then on Thursday evening my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and felt my heart sink. Vanessa and Derek stood on my porch, both dressed nicely, both wearing expressions of determined concern. They'd driven 3 hours to show up unannounced, and I knew this wasn't a social call. This was an ambush. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Sweetheart, what are you doing here? We came to see you, Mom. We've been worried sick. You haven't been returning calls. You said strange things the last time we talked. Derek and I wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm fine. You should have called first. We did call. You didn't answer. So we decided we needed to see you in person. Can we come in? We brought dinner. Chinese food from that place you like. The manipulation was sophisticated. The food from my favorite restaurant, the expression of concern, the implication that my failure to answer calls was evidence of a problem rather than a boundary. They were good at this, or at least Derek was good at it and Vanessa was following his script. I suppose you'd better come in then. But I can't visit long. I have plans this evening. It was a lie, but I wanted an exit strategy. They settled onto my couch while I unpacked the takeout containers in the kitchen, hyper-aware of Derek's eyes scanning my home. What was he looking for? Financial documents left carelessly on the counter? Bank statements? Evidence of the assets he wanted to access? Mom, Derek and I have been talking. We think maybe you should see a doctor. Vanessa's voice carried from the living room, artificially bright. A doctor? Why would I need to see a doctor? Well, you've been acting so strangely lately. The paranoid comments on the phone, refusing to communicate normally. We're worried you might be experiencing some early cognitive decline. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It happens to lots of people your age. There it was, the nuclear option. If they could establish that I was mentally incompetent, they could potentially get power of attorney, make medical decisions for me, access my accounts under the guise of protecting me from myself. It was brilliant in its cruelty, and I finally understood that Marcus and Detective Morrison had been absolutely right. I'm not experiencing cognitive decline, Vanessa. I'm experiencing clarity. There's a difference. Derek joined in, his voice smooth and reasonable. Patricia, no one's saying there's anything seriously wrong. But at your age, it's just smart to get checked out regularly. I could help you find a good neurologist, someone who specializes in aging-related issues. How thoughtful of you, Derek. Tell me, do you help all your girlfriend's parents find neurologists? Or is this special attention reserved just for me? His expression flickered just for a second, showing something cold beneath the concerned facade. I just want to help. Because you're such a helpful person? Is that why you've been so insistent about my phone? Is that why you care so much about what device I use to make calls and send texts? I care because Vanessa cares and Vanessa is worried about you. Then let me put Vanessa's mind at ease. I saw a doctor last month for my annual checkup. Clean bill of health. Sharp as ever, according to Dr. Patterson. No signs of cognitive decline whatsoever. Would you like to see the paperwork? The lie came easily, smoothly. I hadn't been to the doctor in months, but they didn't know that. And the claim shut down that line of attack effectively. Vanessa and Derek exchanged another of those loaded glances, and I could almost see the wheels turning as they recalculated their approach. That's wonderful news, Mom. Derek's voice was too smooth, too practiced. But even healthy people can benefit from regular cognitive assessments. It's just preventive care, really. I set down the container of lo mein I'd been holding and walked back into the living room. I remained standing while they sat on my couch, establishing a physical dynamic that made it clear this was my home, and they were visitors who were rapidly overstaying their welcome. You know what I find interesting? I said, keeping my voice conversational. I find it interesting that you drove 3 hours on a Thursday evening unannounced to discuss my phone and my cognitive health. Most people would call that an overreaction to a simple difference of opinion about technology. We're not overreacting, Vanessa said, but there was a defensive edge to her tone. We're being proactive because we love you. If you loved me, you'd respect my choices instead of trying to override them. If you loved me, you'd accept that I'm capable of making my own decisions about what technology one use. Derek leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, in a posture that probably looked earnest and concerned to anyone who didn't know what I now knew about him. Patricia, I think maybe we got off on the wrong foot about this whole phone thing. It's not about controlling you or disrespecting your choices. It's genuinely about safety and connection. Your flip phone doesn't have GPS, doesn't have emergency services integration, doesn't have any of the features that could help you in a crisis. I've lived 62 years without GPS tracking, and I'm still here. That's survivorship bias, he said, warming to his topic. You've been lucky. But as we age, the risks increase. Falls, medical emergencies, disorientation. Having a smartphone with location services could literally save your life. And you're so concerned about my life that you drove 3 hours to convince me of this? On a work night. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Like I said, I care about Vanessa and Vanessa cares about you. Therefore, I care about your well-being. How generous. Tell me, Derek, in your professional opinion as a software engineer, how difficult would it be to monitor someone's smartphone remotely? To track their location, access their apps, maybe even their financial accounts? The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. What kind of question is that? A simple one. You're the expert. How hard would it be? That would depend on a lot of factors. Access to the device, security settings, whether the person had enabled certain permissions. But theoretically, if someone had physical access to a phone and knew what they were doing, they could install software that would allow pretty extensive monitoring. Interesting. So my old flip phone, which doesn't run apps or connect to the internet beyond basic functions, would be much harder to monitor that way. Technically, yes, but that's a paranoid way to think about technology. Is it? Or is it realistic? Vanessa stood up abruptly. Hey, this is getting ridiculous. Mom, what's going on with you? Why are you acting like we're the enemy? I'm not acting like anything. I'm asking questions and making observations. You're the ones who showed up uninvited to pressure me about a phone. We came because we're worried about you. Then let me put your worries to rest. I'm fine. I'm healthy. I'm making my own decisions. And I'm keeping my flip phone. For how long? Derek's question hung in the air. The mask had slipped slightly, revealing frustration underneath the concern. Excuse me? How long are you planning to keep using that obsolete phone? Until it stops working, I suppose. Or until I decide I want something different. Which I don't. You're being unreasonable. Am I? Or am I being cautious? There's a lot of fraud targeting seniors these days. Identity theft, financial scams, people gaining access to accounts through technology. I'd be foolish not to protect myself. We're not trying to scam you, Vanessa said, but her voice wavered slightly. We're your family. Some of the worst financial abuse comes from family members. I read an article about it recently. Adult children who see their parents' assets as their inheritance, who get impatient waiting for nature to take its course. That's a horrible thing to say. It's a horrible thing to be true. But it happens more often than people want to admit. I watched them both carefully, looking for tells, for signs of guilt or anger or calculation. Vanessa looked hurt and confused, but Derek's expression was harder to read. He was better at controlling his reactions, which made sense if he'd done this before. I think we should go, Derek said, standing up and placing a hand on Vanessa's shoulder. Your mom clearly isn't in a place where she can have a rational conversation right now. Rational. That word again, the implication that my resistance to their agenda indicated irrationality rather than clear thinking. They gathered their things and I walked them to the door. Vanessa paused on the threshold. Mom, I don't know what's happened to you, but I hope you figure it out soon. Because this version of you, this suspicious, paranoid version, isn't someone I recognize. Maybe you never knew me as well as you thought you did. Or maybe you're changing into someone I can't trust. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. I guess we'll see. After they left, I locked the door and engaged the deadbolt, something I rarely bothered with. Then I called Detective Morrison and told her about the visit. The cognitive decline angle is new, she said, but not surprising. It's a common tactic when direct approaches don't work. They establish that you're mentally incompetent, get power of attorney, and then they have legal access to everything. What should I do? Document everything. If they try to get you declared incompetent, you'll need evidence that you're of sound mind. Maybe schedule an actual appointment with your doctor. Get a formal assessment. It'll be useful to have that documentation. I made the appointment the next morning. Dr. Patterson was surprised to see me requesting a cognitive evaluation, but he administered a series of tests that I apparently passed with flying colors. He wrote a letter documenting my mental competency and noting that I showed no signs of dementia, confusion, or cognitive impairment. I filed the letter carefully with copies made and stored in 2 separate locations. The weekend passed quietly. No calls from Vanessa, no surprise visits, just silence that felt more ominous than peaceful. I worked in my garden and tried to enjoy the autumn sunshine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was building, that the confrontation in my living room had been a preliminary skirmish rather than the main battle. Monday morning brought a call from my bank. Mrs. Brennan, this is Jennifer from Fraud Prevention at Riverside Community Bank. We had someone come in this morning claiming to be your daughter, requesting to be added to your accounts. They had some of your personal information but couldn't provide proper identification for themselves, so we declined the request. But I wanted to alert you to the attempted access. My heart pounded. What information did they have? Your full name, address, social security number, and date of birth. They claimed they had your permission to be added as a joint account holder, and seemed surprised when we asked for documentation. Can you describe the person who came in? Young woman, late 20s, blonde hair, very well dressed. She seemed annoyed when we wouldn't immediately comply with her request. That wasn't Vanessa. My daughter had dark hair and was in her early 30s. Someone else was trying to access my accounts using my information that Derek or Vanessa must have provided. Thank you for calling me, Jennifer. No, I did not authorize anyone to be added to my accounts. Can we add some additional security measures? Absolutely. Let's set up verbal passwords and alerts for any access attempts. We spent 20 minutes making my accounts as secure as possible. Then I called Detective Morrison. This is escalating faster than I expected, she said after I explained about the bank incident. The description doesn't match your daughter, which suggests Derek has other associates involved. This isn't just him and Vanessa. This is a coordinated network. What happens now? Now we watch and wait. They've made their first overt illegal move by attempting to access your accounts with fraudulent information. If they try again, we can potentially make arrests. But Mrs. Brennan, I need you to understand that you might be in danger. If Derek realizes you're onto him, if he knows his scheme is falling apart, he could become desperate. I felt cold despite the warm morning. What kind of danger? In previous cases, when marks have resisted, Derek has used intimidation tactics. Showing up at their homes repeatedly, making veiled threats, trying to isolate them from other family members and friends. In one case, an elderly woman's car was vandalized. In another, someone broke into a house, though nothing was taken. Just scare tactics to make the victim more compliant. Should I go somewhere else? Stay with a friend? That might not be a bad idea for a few days. Do you have somewhere you could go? My sister Ruth in Boston. I could take a trip to visit her. That's good. But Mrs. Brennan, keep your flip phone with you. Don't let anyone convince you to upgrade or change devices. That phone is your protection right now. I packed a bag and booked a flight to Boston for the next morning. Then I called Ruth and explained a carefully edited version of what was happening. She was horrified and immediately insisted I stay as long as I needed. That evening, as I was finishing my packing, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw a man I didn't recognize, tall and heavy-set, wearing a delivery uniform. I didn't open the door. "Package for Patricia Brennan," he called through the door. "Needs a signature." "I don't recognize your uniform," I called back. "What company are you with?" "Express Parcel Service." "I'd never heard of that company. Can you leave it on the porch?" "I'll get it later." "Needs a signature, ma'am." "Company policy." "Then I'll have to miss this delivery. Come back another time." The man stood there for another minute, then walked back to a van parked on the street. But he didn't drive away. He sat there watching my house. I called Detective Morrison. "She's making arrests," she said. "That's not a delivery person. That's intimidation. I'm sending a patrol car to your location right now. Stay inside, keep your doors locked." The patrol car arrived 10 minutes later, and the van drove away as soon as the police pulled up. The officer came to my door and took a statement, noting the van's license plate, which would probably turn out to be fake or stolen. "This kind of harassment is classic Derek Whitmore," the officer said. "He's testing your vulnerabilities, seeing if you're alone, seeing how you react to pressure. You did the right thing not opening the door." After the officer left, I sat in my living room with all the lights on and my flip phone clutched in my hand. This simple device, this piece of outdated technology that everyone had mocked, had become my lifeline. It couldn't be hacked or monitored or used to track me. It couldn't be loaded with spyware or used to access my accounts. It was just a phone, and that limitation had become its greatest strength. I flew to Boston the next morning. Ruth met me at the airport, and the relief I felt at seeing her familiar face almost broke my composure. We'd always been close despite the distance, talking weekly and visiting several times a year. She was 3 years older than me, a retired teacher with a sharp mind and even sharper instincts for when something was wrong. Over dinner that night, I told her everything. The pressure about the phone, the meeting with Marcus Chan, the detective's warnings, the attempted bank access, the fake delivery person. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing more alarmed with each revelation. "Patty, this is serious. This isn't just a disagreement about technology. This is organized crime." "I know. That's why I'm here." "But Ruth, the worst part isn't the fraud or the intimidation. The worst part is not knowing how much Vanessa understands about what's happening. Is she a victim too? Being manipulated by someone she trusts? Or is she actively participating in a plot to steal from me? From what you've told me, it could be either. Derek sounds like a professional manipulator. He could have convinced her that helping him access your accounts was somehow helping you, protecting you from yourself. That's what I keep hoping." But then I remember her face when she said I wasn't someone she recognized anymore. The coldness in her voice. That wasn't manipulation. That was anger at not getting what she wanted. Ruth reached across the table and took my hand. "Whatever happens, you did the right thing. Protecting yourself isn't paranoid. Maintaining boundaries isn't cruel. And refusing to be victimized isn't selfish." I stayed in Boston for 2 weeks. During that time, my phone rang repeatedly with calls from Vanessa and from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't answer any of them. Detective Morrison called with updates. The van from the fake delivery attempt had been reported stolen 2 days before it appeared at my house. They'd identified the driver as a known associate of Derek's, someone who'd been involved in previous fraud schemes. The woman who tried to access my bank accounts had been arrested when she attempted the same scam at another bank with different victim information. Everything was building toward a case against Derek, but they needed more evidence, more direct connections between him and the various crimes being committed in his orbit. Meanwhile, Vanessa sent increasingly frantic messages. "Mom, where are you? Why aren't you answering? I'm scared something happened to you. Please call me back. Mom, Derek and I are worried sick. If you don't call soon, we're filing a missing persons report. Mom, this is ridiculous. You can't just disappear. We need to know you're okay." The messages revealed their strategy. If I didn't respond, they could claim I was missing or in danger, potentially triggering wellness checks or even an involuntary psychiatric hold if they could convince authorities I was a danger to myself. It was brilliant in its manipulation, turning my silence into evidence of incompetence. On Detective Morrison's advice, I sent a single text message to Vanessa using my flip phone. "I am fine and safe. I am visiting family. I do not wish to be contacted. Please respect my boundaries. The response came within minutes. What family? Aunt Ruth? Why would you go there without telling me? What's going on? I didn't reply. The next message was more aggressive. This is childish, Mom. You're acting like a paranoid old woman. Derek thinks you might be having a mental health crisis. Then the threats became more explicit. If you don't call me back today, I'm calling the police for a wellness check. You're clearly not capable of making rational decisions. I forwarded all the messages to Detective Morrison. This is good, she said. This shows escalation and attempted coercion. Keep them coming. Don't engage, just document. Ruth and I spent the 2 weeks doing normal sister things. We went to museums and bookstores, had long dinners at her favorite restaurants, took walks through her neighborhood admiring the fall foliage. We talked about everything except Vanessa and Derek, and it was healing in a way I hadn't expected. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be around someone who didn't want anything from me except my company. But I couldn't hide in Boston forever. I had a life in Riverside, a house and garden that needed tending, responsibilities I couldn't abandon indefinitely. When I told Ruth I was planning to go home, she offered to come with me, at least for a few days to help me get resettled. I accepted. Gratefully. We flew back to California on a Tuesday morning. Detective Morrison met us at my house with 2 uniformed officers. They'd arranged for increased patrols in my neighborhood and had installed a more sophisticated security system while I was gone, cameras covering all entrances and motion sensors that would alert both me and the police department if anyone approached. Your house is as secure as we can make it without putting you in protective custody, Detective Morrison said. But Mrs. Brennan, you need to be prepared for the possibility that things might get worse before they get better. Derek knows he's running out of time. The woman who tried to access your bank accounts has already given testimony implicating him in multiple fraud schemes. We're building a case, but desperate people do unpredictable things. That night, Ruth and I made dinner together in my kitchen, and I tried to pretend everything was normal. But I jumped at every sound, watched the security camera feeds obsessively, kept my flip phone within reach at all times. The simplicity that had always characterized my life had been replaced by constant vigilance. The call came at 3 in the morning. My flip phone rang with Vanessa's number, and something made me answer despite my exhaustion. Mom. Her voice was thick with tears. Mom, I need help. Vanessa. What's wrong? Where are you? I'm at the hospital. Derek, he hurt me. Mom, I'm so scared. Please come. My heart seized. Which hospital? Seattle Memorial. Please, Mom. I don't know who else to call. I'm leaving now. I'll be there as soon as I can. Ruth was already awake, having heard the phone ring. Let me come with you, she said. You shouldn't drive 3 hours in the middle of the night alone. We took her car, and I spent the drive trying not to imagine what might have happened. Had Derek hurt Vanessa because she questioned him? Because she discovered what he was really doing? Had my daughter finally seen the truth about the man she'd planned to marry? We arrived at Seattle Memorial just after 6 in the morning. I asked for Vanessa at the emergency department desk, and the nurse directed me to a room in the back. When I walked in, my daughter looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. She had a black eye and a split lip, and her right arm was in a sling. Oh, sweetheart. I rushed to her bedside. What happened? He got so angry, she whispered. I told him I wanted to postpone the wedding, that things were moving too fast, that I needed time to think. And he just exploded. Said I was ruining everything that I'd promised him that I owed him. The doctor says my arm's just bruised, not broken. But Mom, the things he said. It was like I was talking to a stranger. Where is he now? I don't know. After he pushed me, I ran to a neighbor's house and they called 911. The police are looking for him. I sat on the edge of her hospital bed and carefully put my arm around her shoulders. I'm here now. You're safe. I'm so sorry, Mom. About everything. About the phone thing, about Christmas being weird, about not listening when you tried to warn me. He kept saying you were the problem, that you were trying to control us, that once we were married everything would be easier because we'd have access to family resources and wouldn't have to depend on you. Family resources. There it was again, the phrase that revealed so much. Did he ever explain what he meant by family resources? Your retirement accounts. Your properties. He said most adult children eventually inherit from their parents, and we needed to make sure we were set up to manage things properly when the time came. He made it sound so reasonable, so normal. I stroked her hair. This daughter I'd raised alone, who I'd tried so hard to teach to be strong and independent. How long had he been talking about my money? Since pretty early on. But it wasn't like he was obsessed with it or anything. He just mentioned sometimes that it was smart to think ahead, to plan for the future. He said lots of elderly people struggle with technology and finances, and it's the children's responsibility to step in and help. Did he ever ask you to help him access my accounts? Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. He wanted me to get the passwords to your email. He said it would be easier to help you with online stuff if we could just handle things remotely. He made it sound like we'd be doing you a favor. And did you give him my passwords? I tried, but you never wrote them down anywhere I could find. You kept everything so private, so locked down. He got frustrated about that. Said you were making things harder than they needed to be. I felt a wave of gratitude for my paranoid habits, for my refusal to write down passwords or leave financial documents where anyone could find them. Those small securities had protected me without my even realizing I needed protection. Vanessa, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. Did you know he was planning to steal from me? No. She started crying again. I swear, Mom, I thought it was all normal stuff. Planning for the future, being prepared, helping elderly parents navigate complicated systems. He made it sound so caring, so responsible. I didn't realize until tonight, when he lost control, that he'd been manipulating me this whole time. Ruth, who'd been standing quietly by the door, finally spoke. Vanessa, your mother has been working with the police. Derek is under investigation for elder fraud. He's done this before with other families. You're not the first person he's manipulated. Vanessa's face went white. The police? For how long? A couple of months. Ever since a cybersecurity consultant noticed Derek's pattern and reached out to warn me. All those times I wouldn't upgrade my phone, all those times I seemed paranoid, I was protecting myself from a scheme you didn't even know you were part of. I thought I was protecting Derek. I thought you were being difficult and unreasonable. I thought if I could just convince you to be more flexible, more trusting, everything would work out. She looked at me with eyes full of guilt and pain. Mom, I called you mentally incompetent. I suggested you needed a doctor. I tried to undermine your judgment because Derek convinced me you were the problem. I know. But sweetheart, manipulators are good at what they do. Derek spent months grooming you, positioning himself as the voice of reason, while making me look like the obstacle. It's not your fault you believed him. It is my fault. I chose him over you. I chose money and plans and future security over my own mother. That's unforgivable. We sat together in that hospital room as dawn broke over Seattle, and I held my daughter while she cried. She wasn't the innocent child I'd raised anymore, but she wasn't the enemy I'd feared either. She was something in between, someone who'd made mistakes but was willing to face them. Detective Morrison arrived an hour later with news. They'd arrested Derek at the airport, trying to board a flight to Mexico with a carry-on bag containing over $40,000 in cash and multiple fake IDs. His apartment had yielded computers with extensive files on elderly victims, including detailed notes about me, my financial situation, my routines, and strategies for gaining access. The evidence was overwhelming. He'd be charged with multiple counts of fraud, attempted theft, assault, and a dozen other crimes. It's over, Detective Morrison said. You're safe and so is your daughter. But Mrs. Brennan, you should know that we found communication between Derek and several other individuals planning similar schemes. Your flip phone, your refusal to upgrade, your insistence on maintaining privacy, it all went into a database they were building of difficult targets. You were flagged as high security, someone who would require more intensive manipulation. So my stubbornness made me harder to victimize? Your caution made you harder to victimize. There's a difference. You weren't stubborn. You were smart. You recognized that newer isn't always better. That convenience sometimes comes at the cost of security. That old phone of yours probably saved you from losing everything. Vanessa squeezed my hand. I'm sorry I made you feel bad about it. I'm sorry I called you paranoid and behind the times. You were the only one who saw clearly what was happening. I wasn't always clear. There were times I doubted myself, times I wondered if everyone was right and I was just being difficult. But I had something more important than certainty. I had boundaries, and I was willing to defend them even when it cost me my relationship with you. It almost did cost us our relationship. Almost. But we're here now, and we get to rebuild from honesty instead of manipulation. Over the following days, Vanessa gave her full statement to the police. She handed over text messages, emails, recorded conversations that revealed the extent of Derek's planning. She was devastated by how completely she'd been deceived, but she was also determined to help build the case against him. Ruth stayed for a week, helping both of us process what had happened. She and Vanessa spent hours talking through how manipulation works, how intelligent people can be deceived, how love can be weaponized by people who don't actually feel it. It was painful but necessary, the kind of emotional work that can't be rushed or skipped. When Ruth finally returned to Boston, Vanessa stayed in Riverside for another week. We didn't talk about Derek or fraud or phones. We just spent time together, relearning how to be mother and daughter without the weight of hidden agendas between us. She helped in my garden, pulling weeds and planting bulbs for spring. We cooked meals together and watched old movies and talked about everything except the investigation. One evening, as we sat on my back porch watching the sunset, Vanessa picked up my flip phone from the table where I'd left it. "This thing saved you," she said softly. "Everyone made fun of it, called it outdated and limited. But it was exactly what you needed." "It was never about the phone," I said. "It was about knowing what I needed and refusing to let anyone convince me otherwise. Even when that meant standing alone. Especially when that meant standing alone." She turned the phone over in her hands, studying its simple design. "How did you know? How did you know not to trust Derek, not to trust me when I was pushing so hard?" "I didn't know for sure. But I knew something felt wrong. The pressure was too intense for something that shouldn't have mattered. And once I started asking why it mattered so much, the answers pointed in directions that scared me. I should have asked those questions too. I should have wondered why Derek cared so much about access to your technology and your accounts. Yes, you should have. But you were in love, or you thought you were. And love makes us want to believe the best in people." She set the phone back down. "I'm going to be more careful from now on. Not just about relationships, but about everything. About protecting myself and the people I care about." "Good. But Vanessa, don't let this make you so suspicious that you can't trust anyone. There's a balance between being cautious and being closed off. You need to find that middle ground. How do you find it? You start by trusting yourself. By listening to the voice that says something feels wrong even when you can't articulate exactly what it is. By setting boundaries and seeing how people react to them. People who genuinely care about you will respect your boundaries. People who are using you will push against them. That's how you know the difference." We sat in comfortable silence as the light faded from the sky. My flip phone remained on the table between us, this simple device that had become the symbol of my resistance, my refusal to be convinced that what everyone else wanted was what I needed. Derek's trial came 6 months later. Vanessa and I both testified about the manipulation tactics, the pressure campaigns, the systematic attempts to access my accounts. The prosecution presented evidence of 9 other victims spanning 5 years. Elderly parents and grandparents who'd lost everything because they'd been convinced to upgrade their technology and share their access. I sat in that courtroom holding my flip phone, this 8-year-old device that had accidentally become my shield. The prosecutor held it up during closing arguments, explaining how my refusal to modernize had disrupted an entire fraud operation. The jury convicted Derek on all counts. He received 15 years in federal prison. Vanessa moved back to Riverside 3 months after the trial ended. She quit her job in Seattle, unable to stay in the city where she built a life with someone who'd never really existed. She found work with a local marketing firm and rented an apartment 10 minutes from my house. We had dinner together twice a week, slowly rebuilding trust through consistency and honesty. She never pressured me about my phone again. In fact, she got herself a simpler device. Something with basic functions, but without the constant connectivity she'd once considered essential. "We're both happier this way," she told me one evening. "Less accessible to people who want to use us." A year after Derek's conviction, I finally did upgrade my phone. Not because anyone pressured me, but because I chose to. I selected a model with strong security features and minimal smart capabilities. Vanessa helped me set it up, but she never asked for my passwords or access to my accounts. She understood now that help and control were different things. The old flip phone sits in my desk drawer now. I keep it charged, a reminder that sometimes resistance is protection, that boundaries matter more than convenience, that trusting your instincts can save you from people who count on you doubting yourself. Detective Morrison calls occasionally to update me on other cases where my testimony helped establish patterns of fraud. Apparently my story has been used in training materials for financial institutions, teaching bank employees to recognize when elderly customers are being pressured by family members to make unusual changes to their accounts. Vanessa and I planted a garden together this spring. As we worked the soil, she said something that made me understand we truly moved past what happened. "Mom, thank you for not giving up on me. For seeing that I was a victim too, even when I was hurting you." I pulled her into a hug, dirt-covered gloves and all. "You're my daughter." That never changed even when everything else did. My simple choice to keep an outdated phone had exposed a criminal, saved my savings, and ultimately brought my daughter back to me. Sometimes the old ways aren't just safer. Sometimes they're exactly what we need. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.